On this episode, we talk about 2 things I learnt in Helsinki. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Now, as you've picked up, if you've been watching the past few episodes, Tay and I have been traveling around Europe, and this is another one of those Europe-related episodes. We recently spent 5 or 6 days in Helsinki, hanging out with some friends. Hi, Perry and Ida. And while I was there, I noticed a couple of Wussity waterway related things that I wanted to share with you. So this isn't one of those episodes where I'm like, hard and fast, I learned this and we should do it. This is more one of those, that was interesting sort of episodes. And I think those sorts of episodes are important because I believe that by going out and exposing ourselves to new ideas, new concepts, it makes us look at the things that we are doing a little bit differently. And maybe we don't just immediately toss them out and go do something else. But it gives us pause for thought to go, that's interesting. And just to, a new perspective on what we're doing. And maybe occasionally, maybe every now and again, then we do go, yeah, we need to change. So what were these 2 things you noticed? Wait, first, before that, you're probably wondering, Jack, why are you filming in front of a hotel room door? Look, the honest answer is this. The other options weren't particularly good. For example, we had this and this. Yeah, not great options, hey. So, what were these 2 things I noticed while in Helsinki? Well, the first one I noticed really immediately on the first evening that we got there, got to the accommodation, jumped out of the car on the street outside, and I noticed something about the downpipe. So in Australia, typically, by the way, context here, we're staying about 1 kilometre from the centre of Helsinki. It's fairly built up. Like in Australia, we'd consider it fairly inner city. We're talking like 5, 6 story apartment buildings built in the 1930s, I think. Could be wrong about that. So fairly dense, fairly inner city. Got out of the apartment building, noticed something about the downpipes. Now in Australia, in that sort of context, you might expect downpipe to go from gutter on the roof, down the side of the building, underneath the footpath, discharges into the curb, and then from there into the drain in the road, and so on. In Helsinki, at least in this part of Helsinki, could be different in other areas, it goes roof, gutter, downpipe. Downpipe discharges onto the top of the footpath, and there's like a groove cut into the footpath, takes the water out across the footpath and just drops it off the edge and into the curb and channel. And I thought that was, interesting. I'm not saying that we should do it, but I was like, okay, I can see how, given the natural environment of Helsinki, why that could make sense. Hello? I thought there was someone at the door there. Why that could make sense. And the reason is this. Firstly, Helsinki only gets about 650 mils a year of precipitation. Secondly, it's a real long way north, so a fair whack of that is snow. So when you combine those 2 things together, the fact is there's probably not a lot of occasions where you're just getting massive downpours of rain that you want to neatly, channel without getting the footpath wet. Because either it's or without getting massive torrents of water flowing across the footpath. Because obviously it's raining, the footpath is wet anyway. Silly Jack. But winter, snow. Obviously it's snowing everywhere, and then you get slow snow melt. So I imagine the dynamics of how that water kind of runs off and what stays wet for longer is a little bit different compared to a rainstorm. So I was like, okay, that's logical. I then decided it wasn't a great concept when I saw someone trying to skateboard down the footpath. So that was number 1. Thing number 2 that I noticed, we had an opportunity to go a little bit outside Helsinki and spend some time next to a few waterways. We went across onto an island just off the coast near Helsinki, like it's 15 minutes by ferry sort of thing. And I got to notice what I think were some of the native wetland plants out there. And something that I'd been wondering about, I had this, this recognition that Helsinki, different climate, different weather. I was wondering whether their wetland-ish plants would take a similar form to those in Australia. So stereotypically a wetland plant in Australia, something that grows in standing water, you might expect to have a narrow tube-like stem. If you were to break it open, it's actually hollow in the middle because it holds air in there, which is how the plant gets oxygen when it's submerged underwater. But I was thinking, oh, you know what, really wet climate, not really wet climate, really cold climate with much less rainfall, freezes over in winter. I wonder whether the plants are going to look really similar. And I was really surprised to see some really, really similar looking species. There's no point beyond that except to say, okay, similar looking species over here. Seems like, nature has adapted to obviously, to take those same principles of how wetland plants have evolved and survive in that particular unique climate, and nature has evolved those plants enough to then be able to deal with the very different climates of a very cold, wintry, snowy Helsinki, as opposed to Australia, which is very, very different. And I found that really interesting. Okay, that's it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found that interesting. And we'll see you next time on Ideanthro. Cheers. See ya.